I still remember the night my life began to fall apart, as vividly as if it had happened yesterday. Sarah, my wife of 7 years, had once again told me she'd be working late. She had been saying that a lot lately, always with some excuse. A big deadline. An urgent meeting. Project that couldn't wait. First, it seemed like part of her routine. But one night I noticed something, the unmistakable scent of cologne on her blouse. A scent that wasn't mine. That moment is burned into my memory. She stood at the door, brushing off my questions with a tired smile that quickly faded. I knew her well enough to sense something had changed, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking, but the feeling wouldn't go away. I couldn't sleep that night. As days passed, my suspicion grew stronger, eating away at me. Eventually, I could no longer ignore it. One evening, she went out again, supposedly for a business dinner. I had put the kids to bed and tried to distract myself with a movie, but the tension in the house was suffocating. My phone buzzed with a message from my friend Rob. "Rob, Mark, you okay? You've been quiet lately." I sighed deeply and decided to be honest. "Me, I don't know, man. I feel like something's wrong with Sarah. She's always working late or meeting friends. And even when she's home, she's not really here. Rob, have you talked to her about it?" "Me, I tried, but she just brushes it off, tells me I'm imagining things." His reply was cautious but direct. "Rob, look, I'm not saying anything's going on, but if you feel something's off, you owe it to yourself to find out." I stared at his message for a long time. The words echoed in my head like a warning. That was it. I had to know the truth. The next day, Sarah left her phone on the kitchen counter before heading to the shower. My heart pounded as I picked it up, my fingers trembling. I knew I was invading her privacy, but I couldn't bear the uncertainty anymore. As I scrolled, a notification caught my eye. A message from someone named M. My stomach churned as I opened it. "And last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." Felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared. I set the phone down, my hands shaking as I tried to regain my composure before she came back. How could I confront her? What could I say without breaking down? When she returned, I forced myself to act normal. She kissed me on the cheek, too distracted to notice the strain in my smile. Then she left for work. As soon as she was gone, I sat there, staring blankly at the wall, trying to make sense of the betrayal unfolding before me. This wasn't just some fleeting affair. She was falling for someone else. And I hadn't seen it coming. That evening, I reached my breaking point. Sarah had told me she'd be working late again, but I was done believing her. Knowing she had a few errands to run before heading to the office, I decided to follow her. I dropped the kids off at my mom's for the weekend, telling them I'd be back soon. Then I set out to uncover the truth. I parked outside her office building and waited. Minutes dragged by, each one heavier than the last. Finally, I saw Sarah arrive, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. She looked beautiful, but there was a tension in her posture I hadn't noticed before. Hours passed. The feeling of dread only grew stronger. Just when I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, I saw Mike, her coworker, walk into the building. My heart sank. This was it. I felt like I was walking straight into a trap, but I had to know. I waited until the office lights began to dim, then quietly made my way to the entrance, slipping inside unnoticed. My heart pounded as I moved down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. As I neared the conference room, I peeked through the glass door. There they were, Sarah and Mike, sitting close together, leaning over a table cluttered with papers. My stomach churned as I watched them laugh, the chemistry between them unmistakable. And then it happened. I couldn't believe my eyes. Without warning, they leaned even closer. Before I could process what was happening, they kissed, passionately. My world spun. I watched in horror as they began to undress each other. I could barely breathe, my throat tight with disbelief. Everything I had known, everything I had trusted, was crumbling in front of me. Sarah! I shouted, bursting into the room. My voice echoed off the walls, sharp and raw with pain. They froze. Sarah's face turned ghostly pale as she turned toward me. Mark, she stammered, but I cut her off, unable to contain the devastation coursing through me. What is this? I demanded. I shouted, my heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. How could you do this? To me? To our family? It's not what you think, Sarah tried to explain, but I wasn't having it. Not what I think. You're cheating, Sarah. You've been lying to me for months, sneaking around like a thief in the night. Mike stepped back, raising his hands in a defensive gesture. Mark, this isn't the time or place for this, he said, trying to defuse the situation. Shut up. This is between me and my wife. I snapped. Sarah's eyes welled up with tears. Mark, please, let's talk about this. Talk? You think we can fix this with a conversation? I yelled, the walls closing in around me. You betrayed me, Sarah. You betrayed our family. I didn't mean for it to happen, she sobbed. I swear. I was lonely and Mike was there to listen. Lonely? I spat, rage boiling inside me. You have 2 kids at home and that's your excuse? Anger mixed with despair as my world collapsed even further. What about Emma and Jake? They love you. And this is how you repay them. I know, she pleaded, her face crumpling with guilt. I'm sorry. I'll do anything to fix this. But I couldn't listen anymore. I couldn't bear it. I turned and stormed out, feeling like I was losing a part of myself with every step. I got into my car and drove, the world outside a blur through my tears. I was speeding, nearly losing control, swerving just in time to avoid the guardrail. My mind was in a frenzy. How could she do this to me? How could she choose him over our family? When I arrived home, the silence offered no comfort. At least the kids were at my mom's for the weekend. A deep ache spread through my chest as I walked through the empty living room, echoes of laughter from happier times haunting me like ghosts. I made my way to the bedroom, the weight of what had happened pressing down on me. Without thinking, I grabbed a suitcase and started packing. Every item I placed inside felt like another piece of my shattered heart. A few shirts, some jeans. I had no idea how long I would be gone. Then my eyes landed on our marriage certificate, framed on the wall. My chest tightened. Without hesitation, I ripped it down and tore it in half. The finality of that moment washed over me like a tidal wave. My entire life had been a lie. And I couldn't pretend anymore. I finished packing and made the decision to leave, at least for a few days. I found a motel in the next city and called to book a room. As I hung up, a heavy sense of dread settled over me. My life had spiraled out of control, and now I was truly alone. When Sarah returned home, she called out for me. Silence. She searched the house, panic setting in as she found empty coat hangers in the closet and the torn remnants of our marriage certificate scattered across the floor. Her voice grew frantic. Mark! Where are you? She shouted, her words trembling. She pulled out her phone and dialed my number, but it went straight to voicemail. Mark, I'm so sorry. Please answer. I love you and I can fix this. Just give me a chance. Please come back, she begged, her voice cracking with emotion. But I was resolute. A few hours later, I called Rob. I told him everything. Sarah had been cheating on me. And now it was all painfully real. Anguish filled my chest as I asked him if he could meet me for a drink. We met at a bar near my motel, and I let the weight of my heartbreak pour out. I told him about my decision to divorce Sarah. Rob listened quietly, then mentioned a lawyer he knew who could help me. We had a couple more drinks, discussing the situation in depth, before I finally returned to the motel. The next morning, I walked through a nearby park, my hands shaking as the reality of my decision sank in. Each step felt heavy, weighed down by the enormity of it all. The days that followed were a blur. I tried to settle into the motel, but every passing hour was a reminder that my life had changed forever. I sat for hours, lost in thought, reflecting on my marriage, my children, and the uncertain future ahead of me. And then it became clear. I couldn't continue living this way. The love I once had for Sarah had burned out, reduced to nothing but ash. And there was no way to rebuild from that. Finally, gathering the strength to call her, I heard the desperation in her voice the moment she answered. "Mark, please just talk to me. I'll do anything to make this right. I love you." I let out a deep sigh, my heart heavy with sadness. "Love isn't enough, Sarah. You destroyed my trust, and I can't just forget that. I'll go to counseling. I'll change. Please don't leave me," she begged, her voice breaking. But I was firm, despite the pain threatening to consume me. "I have to think about our kids," I replied, my voice resolute. "I don't want them caught in the middle of this." There was silence on the other end. Then, in a broken whisper, she pleaded one last time. "Mark, please don't leave me." Her voice was full of anguish. But I knew what I had to do, that I had to be strong, for our kids' sake. They deserved a stable life, free from the tension that had started poisoning our home. After hanging up, I took a deep breath and dialed my mom's number. She picked up almost immediately, her familiar voice offering a small sense of comfort amidst the storm. "Mark, honey, is everything all right?" she asked, worry lacing her tone. I hadn't told her what had been happening yet, and I could hear the concern in her voice. "Mom," I began, my voice faltering. "I need to talk to you about something. It's about Sarah and me." The words came out strained, but once I started, they poured out of me. I told her everything, the late nights, the lies, and how I had found Sarah with someone else at her office. There was silence on the other end before she sighed softly. "Oh, Mark," she murmured, her voice filled with sympathy. "I had no idea you were going through all of this. I'm so sorry. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted, feeling overwhelmed. "I'm just trying to figure it out. I can't even bring myself to go back to the house right now. I thought I might stay at the motel a bit longer to clear my head." She paused, processing everything I had just told her. "What about Emma and Jake?" she asked gently. "That's why I'm calling," I said, rubbing my temples. "I think it's best if they stay with you for a while, just until things calm down. I don't want them caught in the middle of this mess. I need time to figure out what to tell them." Mom sighed softly, but there was a quiet resolve in her voice. "Of course, honey. They're welcome to stay as long as you need. I'll keep them busy, take them to the park, and try to make things as normal as possible for them. You just focus on what you need to do." "Thank you, Mom," I whispered, relief washing over me. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You don't have to do this alone, Mark," she replied gently. "Take all the time you need. And remember, no matter what happens, you've got a family who loves you and will help you through this." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Her words, her support, meant the world to me. Knowing Emma and Jake would be safe, surrounded by love, gave me a small sliver of peace. The road ahead still felt incredibly long, but at least I wouldn't be walking it alone. I went back to the house. Sarah was there, waiting for me. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red from crying, but I was beyond caring. I wasn't there to talk. I was there to get the rest of my things and start over, without her. "Mark, please," she whispered as I packed. "We can make this right. I'll do anything." I shook my head, my voice empty. "Sarah, do you really think I can ever trust you again after everything you've done?" She sobbed, reaching out for me. "I was lost, Mark. I got caught up in something I didn't mean to. But I know now what a mistake I made. Please, we have to try for Emma and Jake." I closed my suitcase, feeling nothing but a hollow ache. "I am doing this for Emma and Jake," I said quietly. "They deserve parents who respect each other, who love each other. And I can't give them that anymore." That day, I called my lawyer and filed for divorce. The hardest part was telling the kids. They were too young to understand, too young to know why Daddy wouldn't be coming home. But I promised myself that I'd be there for them, that I'd fight for every opportunity to be the father they needed, even if it meant starting over. I was determined to shield them from the fallout of our broken marriage. In the months that followed, I rebuilt my life, piece by piece, finding strength in places I never knew I had. The nights were long and lonely, and the scars of betrayal didn't fade easily. But slowly, I found a new normal, one that no longer depended on lies or broken promises. Looking back now, I realize I lost something precious in those moments. But I also learned what I truly needed in life: honesty, loyalty, and a love that could withstand the trials of time.